I never thought it would end like this. I mean, I knew Zoe had a big social media following, but I didn't think she would throw away everything we had just to get more clout. We had been together for over a year, and things were good, at least I thought so. She was the kind of girl who everyone noticed, the way she walked, the way she talked, the way she smiled, and I used to love that about her. I used to tell myself it didn't matter if people stared, as long as she was mine. But then something changed. I started noticing that her phone was always glued to her hand more than usual. She would laugh at texts and messages I couldn't see, and sometimes she would sneak off to take calls outside. The first time I confronted her, she laughed it off and said it was work or just friends. But deep down, I felt it. I felt that disconnect growing. Every time she posted a photo, it was always staged and always trying to show off something new and shiny. I started feeling like I wasn't enough, like no matter what I did, it would never compete with the idea of her online persona. Then one night, she came home later than usual, and I could tell something was off. Her eyes were brighter in a way that wasn't natural, like she had adrenaline pumping through her. She smiled and said she wanted to talk. I didn't know what was coming, but I braced myself for something serious. She sat me down on the couch, and I could see her fingers fidgeting. She took a deep breath and said she thought it was time we took a break. I felt my chest tighten like someone had wrapped a steel band around it. I asked why, and she shrugged and said she needed space to focus on her career. I didn't understand. I asked if it had anything to do with me, and she said no, not really. But I could see it in her eyes that it was exactly about me. I felt a mix of anger and confusion. She said she just wanted to explore more opportunities and meet new people, and I felt like I was being discarded like a toy she had outgrown. She walked away that night, and I sat in the dark of my apartment, just staring at the wall, wondering what I did wrong. Then the next morning, her social media blew up. She had a photo of herself at a trendy party with people I barely knew, her friends or maybe just connections I didn't recognize, tagged in it. She looked happier than ever, and I realized that's what this was about, clout and exposure, not feelings, not love, not us. I tried to reach out. I sent texts, I called, I even went to her apartment once, but she wasn't interested in talking. She had already moved on to the next event, the next person, the next post. And I felt humiliated, like the whole world could see that I was the guy she dumped to get more attention. I wanted to yell at her and tell her how much she hurt me, but at the same time, I wanted to disappear and forget that she existed. I spent weeks trying to cope. I hung out with friends, I focused on work, I even started hitting the gym and trying to change things about myself. I thought maybe if I became better, she would realize what she lost. But I didn't do it for her. I did it for me. And then things got weirder. I started noticing that she would like my posts occasionally, she would comment with these vague messages about missing the good times or reminiscing about the past. I ignored them at first, thinking it was just attention seeking. But the frequency started increasing. She even sent a direct message one night that said, "Hey, I've been thinking about us." I didn't reply. I wanted to, but I also wanted to protect myself. I didn't want to get sucked back into the drama that she thrived on. I had built walls around my heart, walls that I thought she would never get through. But the messages kept coming. She started showing up at places I was, with friends, or at events where she knew I would be. And every time, it felt like she was trying to make me notice her, like she wanted me to see that she was still in my orbit. That's when I realized this wasn't about feelings at all. This was a game, and she was controlling the pieces. I had been the pawn, and maybe she had always known how to manipulate me without me noticing. She wanted validation and attention, and I had been giving it to her without even knowing it. And the worst part was she had friends who were feeding this behavior, making it seem normal, like everyone did this. I felt trapped in a loop of confusion and hurt, and I didn't know how to break free. I wanted to confront her, but I knew it would lead to drama and more public exposure, and I wasn't ready for that. I wanted to figure out a way to get closure without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. That's when I started noticing patterns, things she would do just before contacting me, things she would post to gauge my reaction. I realized I was in the middle of a calculated plan, and I was just a piece on her board. The anger started to mix with a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't going to be manipulated anymore. I needed a plan to protect myself and make sure that if she wanted me back, she would have to prove that it wasn't just about clout. That's when I started documenting everything, messages, posts, interactions, every little thing that showed her intentions. It was like building evidence for a case I didn't know I would ever take to court, but it gave me power. It gave me control, and most importantly, it gave me peace. I could finally see the situation for what it really was. She didn't love me the way I loved her. She loved the attention, the validation, the thrill of someone wanting her. She didn't want a relationship. She wanted to be admired and envied. And I realized that if I ever got back with her, it would only be repeating the same cycle. And yet, part of me couldn't help but miss her, her laugh, her touch, the way she made me feel alive even if it was temporary. I knew I had to separate my emotions from the situation and focus on my own growth and my own life. That's when I decided that I would not respond to her next move, no matter what it was. I would stay strong. I would let her see that I was not the same person I had been when she broke my heart. I didn't know how long it would take or what she would do next, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my life again. The days after I decided not to respond to Zoe's messages felt both liberating and strange. At first, I kept checking my phone, hoping she wouldn't text, hoping she would leave me alone, and at the same time wishing she would admit she had made a mistake. It was a twisted mix of hope and fear, like standing on the edge of a cliff and not knowing whether to jump or step back. My friends noticed the change in me. They said I looked calmer, more confident, and that I was finally putting myself first, but inside, I felt the tension of waiting for her next move. Then one evening, about 2 weeks after I stopped responding, I saw a story on Instagram that made my stomach drop. Zoe had posted a video at a concert, the camera following her as she danced in the crowd, her friends around her, but the caption said something that made my heart skip, "Wish someone special could be here to see this with me." It was vague, but I knew it was directed at me. I felt that old familiar rush of anger and longing, a combination that was exhausting, and yet I refused to engage. I went for a run to clear my head, and as I ran, I tried to analyze her behavior. She was not only reaching out, she was trying to manipulate my emotions. She wanted me to feel that pull, that magnetic tension between us, because she thrived on control and attention. Over the next few days, the messages increased. First, it was comments on posts, then direct messages, then one late night, a voice note. I hesitated for a moment, thumb hovering over the play button, but my resolve held. I didn't respond. The next morning, I found something even more unsettling. Mutual friends started tagging me in posts where Zoe was clearly making an effort to be noticed by me. One picture showed her laughing with a group of people while glancing in the direction where she thought I might see her story. Another post showed her at a fancy brunch, her caption a cryptic, "Missing someone's smile today." I realized she had coordinated this, consciously or not, with people around her. It was psychological warfare, and she was good at it. I started to feel a little paranoid, wondering if every event I went to or every photo I posted would trigger her next move. And then it happened. She called me. Not a text, not a message, a call that rang through my phone like a warning siren. I stared at it for a moment, heart racing, then let it go to voicemail. I didn't answer. Later, I listened to the voicemail. Her voice was soft, almost seductive in the way it carried a mix of regret and playfulness. She said she missed me, that she had made a mistake, that she realized she couldn't be happy without me. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Part of me wanted to call her back and shout at her, tell her she had no right to toy with me, and the other part wanted to crawl back to her, to feel that rush of intimacy and familiarity. I stayed silent. Instead, I started planning. I needed to figure out how to protect myself from her games while still understanding what her motives really were. That night, I went through every message, every post, every interaction we had in the past month. I made a timeline of events, connecting her attempts to reach me with her social media activity. It became painfully clear that she was not acting out of love or guilt, she was acting out of desire to regain attention and influence over me. I felt a mixture of relief and disgust. Relief because I finally understood, disgust because I had once trusted her completely. The next week, she showed up at a mutual friend's birthday party. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but I went, figuring I could handle it if I stayed grounded. When I arrived, she was there, smiling, dressed to impress, making sure I saw her. My chest tightened, but I kept my composure. I noticed the way she lingered near me, laughing at jokes I wasn't in on, pretending our past didn't exist but subtly hinting that it did. She made sure to brush past me just enough to get my attention, and I felt that old pull again. I realized she was testing me, seeing if I would react, if I would chase, if I would crumble. I stayed calm. I danced, I talked to friends, I made sure she saw that I wasn't dependent on her presence for my happiness. Later that night, I stepped outside for some air and found myself thinking about all the moments we had shared, the intimacy, the laughter, the plans we had made for the future. I felt a pang of longing, but I reminded myself that those memories did not excuse her actions. I wasn't going to be her backup plan or her emotional toy. As the weeks went on, her attempts intensified. She started posting throwback photos of us, captioned with lines that suggested nostalgia and regret. I ignored them. She tried tagging me in stories, sending me direct messages like, "Do you remember when we laughed here?" or "I wish things were different." Each attempt felt like a calculated move in a game of chess, and I refused to be manipulated. Then one day, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was her. "Can we talk? I think I was wrong. I need to explain myself." I stared at it, my mind racing. I wanted to ignore it, but part of me wanted answers. I knew that responding could put me back in the cycle, but not responding would leave questions unanswered. I decided to approach it differently. I replied once, a single sentence, "We can talk, but it has to be on my terms." I waited, and she agreed, suggesting a public place during the day. I spent the next few hours preparing, reminding myself that this wasn't about romance, this was about clarity and control. When I arrived, she was waiting, smiling nervously. She started talking immediately, apologizing, explaining that she had made a mistake, that she had felt lost, and that the attention she got online made her act irrationally. I listened quietly, noting every word, every hesitation, every flicker of guilt or manipulation in her eyes. I realized that she was trying to read my reaction, trying to see if I would forgive her instantly. I didn't. I stayed composed, asking questions, pressing for honesty, making sure that she couldn't slip in any half-truths. The conversation lasted hours. By the end of it, I felt like I had finally seen her motives in their entirety. She wasn't innocent, she wasn't a victim, she wasn't even truly remorseful. She was aware of what she had done, and she wanted me back for validation, to restore her ego. I left that meeting with a sense of relief, but also a strange emptiness. Part of me wanted to chase her, part of me wanted to never see her again. I realized that the battle wasn't over. She had made her move, and I had resisted. The next moves were hers, and I had to stay vigilant because one wrong step and I could be back in the same cycle of manipulation and hurt that I had fought so hard to escape. The days after our conversation felt like walking a tightrope. I kept replaying her words in my mind, analyzing her tone, the pauses, the way she avoided certain topics. It was obvious she was trying to manipulate me, but at the same time, I couldn't deny the flicker of doubt it stirred inside me. I knew I had to stay strong, but my heart kept trying to convince me otherwise. A week later, I received another text, this one shorter, almost casual, "I've been thinking about us. I want to make things right." My first instinct was to ignore it, but something in her phrasing made me pause. I realized that she had learned from our last meeting. She was testing me again, gauging my reaction, and I decided to play it cool. I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on my own life, immersing myself in work and friends, making plans that didn't involve her, and yet, everywhere I went, it felt like she was lurking in the background. Mutual friends started mentioning her more, subtly asking if I had responded or if I had seen her posts. It was as if the entire social circle was aware of the tension and feeding into it, whether intentionally or not. I tried to block her, to distance myself, but every time I did, she found a way around it. She would like old posts, comment under pseudonyms, or send messages through friends. I realized that this wasn't just a casual attempt to reconnect, it was a strategic campaign. She was trying to pull me back without making it obvious that she still wanted control. Then came the party I wasn't sure I should attend. It was another mutual friends gathering, and I debated skipping it, but I also knew that if I disappeared completely, it would give her the victory she was craving. I went, and as I entered the room, I felt that familiar rush. Zoe was there, of course, standing near the center of attention, laughing and talking as if nothing had happened. She looked at me, and for a moment, our eyes met, and I felt that old connection, that magnetic pull that had once consumed me. I reminded myself that this was exactly what she wanted, for me to react, to lose control, to chase. I stayed calm. I mingled, I laughed, I made sure she saw that I was present but not dependent on her presence for my mood. Later that night, she approached me, smiling, trying to initiate casual conversation. She asked about my week, my plans, my life, and I answered politely but briefly, keeping the distance I had promised myself. She hesitated, then tried to drop in references to our past, the memories we shared, the moments that had defined our relationship. I listened, but I didn't respond with emotion. Instead, I asked questions that required honesty, questions that made her reveal her intentions without her realizing it. I could see the shift in her expression, the momentary panic, the slight falter in her charm. She was used to me being responsive, to me giving in to her, and now she realized that I was no longer predictable. I left the party that night feeling a mix of triumph and unease. Triumph because I had maintained control, unease because I knew she wouldn't stop. Over the next few weeks, the intensity of her attempts escalated. She started posting videos and photos that seemed coincidental but were clearly orchestrated to catch my attention. One video showed her walking down a street I used to frequent with her, the caption vague but suggestive, "Sometimes you notice the small things after they're gone." I could feel the bait, but I didn't take it. Instead, I documented everything, building a record of her behavior, her tactics, and her manipulations. I realized that I wasn't just defending myself emotionally anymore, I was preparing for a potential confrontation that could be public, one that would expose the truth without me appearing weak. Then one evening, out of the blue, I received a call from someone claiming to be her friend. They said Zoe wanted to meet, urgently, and that it was important. My mind raced. Was this another manipulation, another test? Or was there something genuine this time? I decided to meet, but with caution. I chose a public place, a cafe with a lot of people around. When I arrived, she was already there, looking anxious, different somehow, less composed than usual. She started talking immediately, apologizing, saying she had realized her mistakes, that she had acted selfishly, and that she genuinely missed me. She explained how the clout and attention had clouded her judgment, how she had been trying to find validation in the wrong places. I listened carefully, noting every pause, every hesitation, every attempt at persuasion. She tried to make me feel sorry for her, to see her as vulnerable, but I kept my guard up. I asked direct questions, forcing her to explain specifics, not generalities, and she faltered. The truth became clear, she wasn't truly remorseful, she was skilled at making it appear that way. I left the cafe feeling a strange mix of anger, sadness, and clarity. I understood now that the game wasn't over, that she would continue testing, pushing, and pulling until she got the reaction she wanted. I realized I had two choices: continue to engage on her terms, risking emotional chaos, or take complete control of the situation and my life, no matter the cost. I chose control. Over the next few days, I implemented boundaries, cutting off indirect contact, blocking certain social media interactions, and ensuring that mutual friends weren't unknowingly feeding her attempts. I felt a sense of liberation, but I also knew that the next move could come at any time, that she would escalate, and that I had to remain vigilant. One morning, I received a message that shook me: "I can't stop thinking about you. Please, just talk to me." My heart raced, and for a moment, I considered replying. Then I remembered the pain, the manipulation, and the cycle we had been trapped in. I stayed silent. I realized that silence was my power, that refusing to play by her rules gave me control she couldn't take from me. And deep down, I knew that if she truly wanted to be in my life, she would have to prove it in a way that went beyond words and social media, a way that demonstrated respect and genuine commitment, not clout or attention. The days after her last message were some of the most intense I had ever experienced. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt a surge of anxiety, a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew it could be her, trying again, testing me, seeing if I had weakened, but I forced myself to ignore it. I focused on my work, my friends, my routines, anything to keep my mind off her, but the pull she had on me was undeniable. Then, one night, out of nowhere, I saw a post that made my stomach drop. Zoe had shared a video from a place we had gone together months ago. The caption simply read, "Some memories are too good to let go." I froze. My first thought was that she was trying to manipulate me, and part of me panicked. But then I realized something: she wasn't apologizing openly this time. She was being subtle, calculated, seeing if I would take the bait, and I refused. I didn't respond, and that night I slept a little easier, feeling a sense of control returning. The next morning, I received a text from a mutual friend, someone who didn't know the full story but had noticed Zoe's behavior. They said, "Zoe keeps asking about you. She's worried you've moved on." That message hit me like a wave. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and wariness. I knew Zoe was obsessed with the idea of me being unattainable, and that only fueled her determination. Over the next week, the attempts became more aggressive. She would show up at places I frequented, seemingly coincidental but obviously planned. One evening, I saw her at a local coffee shop, sitting with friends but making sure to glance in my direction every few minutes. I stayed calm, ordered my drink, and moved on, refusing to give her the reaction she craved. I started noticing patterns in her behavior, subtle hints that indicated she was coordinating with friends to keep tabs on me. It was unsettling, but I also felt empowered knowing I could see through her tactics. Then came the call that would change everything. Zoe reached out directly, not through social media, not through friends, but by phone. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, knowing that answering could undo everything I had worked for, but I needed answers. I picked up. Her voice was soft, almost pleading, and she said, "I made a huge mistake. Can we meet? Please, just listen to me." I agreed, choosing a public place, a park where there would be people around, safe but neutral. When I arrived, she was there, standing awkwardly, nervous, and different somehow. She began talking immediately, apologizing for everything, claiming she had realized her mistakes and that the attention she sought had blinded her. I listened carefully, analyzing every word, every hesitation. I asked questions, pressing for specifics, and she faltered, unable to maintain the facade completely. I realized she wasn't fully sincere, she was performing, trying to convince me of remorse that wasn't entirely genuine. The conversation went on for hours, and by the end, I felt a mix of anger, clarity, and a strange emptiness. I understood her motives now completely. She wanted control, validation, and attention, not love. I left the park knowing I had to protect myself. Over the next few days, I strengthened my boundaries. I blocked indirect contacts, refused to engage in social media interactions, and ensured that mutual friends weren't unknowingly feeding her attempts. I felt liberated, but I also knew she wouldn't stop. Zoe was persistent, cunning, and obsessed with the idea of reclaiming me. Then came the turning point. I was at a work event when I noticed her across the room. She tried to approach me, casually at first, smiling, making small talk, but I stayed composed. I noticed the subtle shifts in her demeanor, the little cracks in her confident facade. She was trying to test me, to see if I would fall back into old patterns. I remained calm, polite, and distant. She started leaving the room, frustrated, and I realized she had never faced resistance like this before. That night, I reflected on everything, the manipulation, the lies, the drama. I understood that if I ever considered letting her back in, it had to be on my terms, with boundaries so strict that she couldn't undermine me again. I realized that this wasn't just about us anymore, it was about power, control, and emotional survival. The next morning, I received a message from her that shook me. I can't stop thinking about you. I need you back. My first instinct was to ignore it, but part of me wanted closure. I decided to respond, carefully, deliberately. If we're ever going to have anything, it has to be real, honest, and on equal terms. Otherwise, it's over. She replied immediately, full of promises, apologies, and declarations of love. I read the messages, then deleted them. I understood that her words were only part of the game. Actions mattered. Real commitment mattered. And she had shown none. I realized that I had reached a point where I could walk away completely, without regret, without looking back. I had control, clarity, and the understanding that my heart and my peace were more important than clout, validation, or temporary feelings. And for the first time in months, I felt free. Weeks passed after I deleted her messages, and the relief I felt was unexpected but welcome. Zoe tried everything she could think of to get my attention: posts, calls, texts, showing up at places she knew I would be, but I remained composed. I focused on myself, my work, my friends, my routines, and slowly, I started to feel like I was reclaiming the life I had lost while caught in her games. Then, one afternoon, a mutual friend reached out, saying Zoe wanted to meet again, claiming she was serious this time, that she had changed, and that she truly missed me. I thought about it for hours, weighing the possibilities. Could she really be sincere, or was this just another manipulation? I decided to meet her, but with clear boundaries and absolute control over the situation. I picked a cafe I liked, a place neutral and public, and arrived early. She showed up, nervous, trying to smile, to seem casual, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She started talking, immediately apologizing, explaining her behavior over the past months, admitting that seeking clout and attention had blinded her, and that she genuinely realized the mistakes she had made. I listened carefully, watching her body language, her hesitations, the way her eyes darted whenever she feared she had said too much. I asked questions, pressing for honesty, for specifics, and noticed the subtle inconsistencies, the parts where she tried to frame things to make herself look better. But this time, I didn't react emotionally. I kept my composure, responding calmly, observing, analyzing. She grew frustrated, realizing that I was no longer the same person, no longer the pawn she could manipulate with ease. After hours of conversation, I finally spoke, setting the terms clearly. If she wanted to be part of my life again, it would have to be on mutual respect, transparency, and boundaries that could not be crossed. She nodded, but I could sense the challenge in her eyes, the desire to reclaim influence. I left the cafe that day feeling a strange mix of relief and strength. I realized that whether or not she followed through, I had won, not her, not clout, not validation, but me. Over the next few weeks, I maintained my boundaries. I didn't respond to posts that were clearly designed to provoke a reaction, I didn't answer indirect messages, and I stayed firm on the principles I had set. Slowly, I felt the pull of her games diminish. She realized that her attempts to manipulate me were futile, that I had grown beyond the person she once had control over. One day, I checked her social media and saw her posts become less frequent, more genuine, and noticeably absent of the subtle attempts to gain my attention. It wasn't a victory over her, it was a victory over the cycle we had been trapped in. I had taken back my emotional autonomy, my self-respect, and my peace of mind. Weeks turned into months, and the anxiety that had dominated my life during our breakup began to fade. I rebuilt my routines, strengthened my friendships, and started to feel like myself again. One evening, I realized that I no longer cared whether Zoe wanted me back. The power she had once held over me had dissolved, replaced with clarity and confidence. I understood now that love should not come with games, manipulation, or clout. True connection required honesty, respect, and equality. And with that understanding, I finally felt free. Zoe may have wanted me back for validation, attention, or ego, but I had found something more valuable: control over my own heart, peace in my own life, and the knowledge that I would never again let someone else dictate my worth. In the end, the clout, the drama, the attempts to pull me back, none of it mattered anymore. I had emerged from the storm stronger, wiser, and entirely in charge of my future, and for the first time, I could walk away without looking back, knowing that I had won the most important battle of all, the one with myself.